The emergency alarm screamed through the halls of the Galactic Council station. Red lights flashed as beings from dozens of worlds rushed to their posts. In the main council chamber, Ambassador Ra's blue skin had turned pale with fear. "Show us the message again," Chancellor demanded from her floating chair. The massive screen lit up with static, then cleared to show a desperate face. Commander Eth of the Outer Rim Defense Force looked like he had not slept in days. His usual calm was gone, replaced by pure terror. "This is our final transmission from the system," his voice cracked. "The swarm has consumed 3 planets. Our entire defense fleet is gone. They are moving toward the core worlds. The bioships adapt to every weapon we use against them. Nothing stops them. Nothing even slows them down." The screen went black. The council chamber fell silent. Ra stood up, his tall frame shaking. "How long do we have?" 6 months, replied General K, the council's military leader. "Maybe less. The swarm moves faster after each planet they consume." "What about our combined fleets?" asked Chancellor. The general's 4 eyes looked down. "We have tried everything. Energy weapons, plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes. The bioships learn from each attack. They grow stronger. Our weapons become useless after the first few hits." The room filled with worried voices. Representatives from 50 worlds all spoke at once, suggesting plans that had already failed. Some wanted to evacuate entire star systems. Others wanted to build bigger weapons. None of them had any real hope. "What if we contact Earth?" a small voice asked. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at Representative I from the peaceful world of Ra. She was young for a galactic representative, and many council members did not take her seriously. Ambassador Ra laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Earth, you want help from those barely civilized. They still use primitive kinetic weapons. They fight with metal bullets and explosive chemicals. What could they possibly do against bioships that our advanced energy weapons cannot handle?" "They survived there," I said quietly. "No other species has done that." "There is a nightmare," Ra replied with disgust. "Violent weather, dangerous animals, poisonous plants. Any civilized species would have died there in a few generations. The fact that humans survived just proves they are as savage as their planet." Chancellor raised her hand for silence. She was old, even for her long-lived race, and had seen many wars. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "that is exactly what we need right now. Savages who know how to fight." "You cannot be serious," Ra protested. "Their ships have no energy shields. They use thick metal armor like some ancient warship. Their fighters carry missiles instead of proper laser weapons. They are hundreds of years behind us in technology." "Yet they have never lost a war," pointed out. General K nodded sadly. "It is true. Every conflict they have been involved in they have won, even when outnumbered, even when facing superior technology." The debate went on for hours. Many council members agreed with Ra. Humans were crude and violent. They came from a world where everything tried to kill them. They had developed weapons and tactics that civilized species found disturbing. Surely their primitive methods would be useless against an enemy that had defeated the galaxy's most advanced fleets. But as the hours passed and no better ideas came forward, even the strongest opponents began to weaken. The swarm was approaching. In 6 months, it would reach the first of the core worlds. Billions would die, maybe trillions. Finally, Chancellor called for a vote, all in favor of requesting military assistance from Earth. The vote was close, but it passed. Representative I looked relieved. Ambassador Ra looked angry. "This is a mistake," he said. "When the humans see our advanced ships and weapons, they will want them for themselves. We will be inviting another dangerous species into our territory." "The humans are already dangerous," replied. "The question is whether they are more dangerous to us or to the swarm." The message was sent that very day. It was brief and to the point. as humans seemed to prefer direct communication. The council explained about the swarm, the failed defense attempts, and the request for military assistance. The reply came faster than anyone expected. Within hours, a response arrived from Earth's Colonial Defense Force headquarters. Admiral Sarah appeared on the screen. She was a middle-aged human woman with short gray hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple military uniform without the decorative elements that most galactic officers preferred. Behind her, other humans worked at stations covered with displays and controls. "Council representatives," she said in accented but clear galactic standard language, "we have received your distress call regarding the swarm. We are familiar with this species from intelligence reports. Earth authorizes full military response." She paused and looked directly at the camera. "Terra fleet will depart within 12 hours. Estimated arrival at the conflict zone is 72 standard hours from now. We recommend all civilian populations evacuate from the projected path of the swarm. Admiral out." The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted in surprised voices. 72 hours. Their own ships would take weeks to reach the outer rim, even at maximum speed. "How are they moving so fast?" General K wondered. Representative I smiled for the first time in days. "Maybe we should have asked for their help sooner." Ambassador Ra shook his head. "This will end badly. Mark my words. We are about to learn why humans are called, and we may not like the lesson." As the council members left the chamber, none of them knew that Admiral was already reviewing intelligence files on the swarm. Her expression was grim but determined. She had fought many battles in her career, but never against an enemy like this. Still, she had one advantage the swarm had never faced before. She was human, and humans had learned to fight on a world where losing meant extinction. The Terra fleet was already moving. Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of the HCDF flagship Indomitable, watching the stars streak past through the hyperspace window. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. The ship hummed with the power of engines pushing it through folded space at speeds that impressed even galactic observers. "Ma'am," called Commander Martinez from the communications station, "we're receiving scout reports from the fleet. They want to share intelligence about our ship designs." Smiled grimly, "Put it on screen." The image showed Commander Al, a tall alien with 4 arms and skin like polished metal. He looked confused and slightly worried as he spoke to his own command staff. "The human vessels are unlike anything in our databases," Al was saying. "Their largest ships appear to be flying fortresses. The hulls are incredibly thick metal armor with no energy shielding systems visible. They carry hundreds of kinetic weapons instead of proper energy cannons." Watched as the alien pointed at images of human ships. To galactic eyes, they must look primitive and crude. Where alien ships were smooth and elegant, human vessels were angular and heavily armored. Where aliens used invisible force fields for protection, humans relied on meters of hardened steel. "Their fighter craft are especially puzzling," Al continued. "No laser weapons at all. They carry what appear to be explosive projectiles and something called missiles. How do they expect to penetrate adaptive bioarmor with such primitive weapons?" Turned off the screen and walked to the tactical display. Her fleet was spread across several light-years of hyperspace, but every ship was exactly where it should be. 200 vessels of various sizes, all built for one purpose: war. The humans had learned to build warships differently than everyone else in the galaxy. It was not because they were primitive or stupid. It was because they came from Earth. Remembered her history lessons from the military academy. Earth was a world that tried to kill everything living on it. Massive storms that could destroy cities. Ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. Volcanoes that could block out the sun. Earthquakes that could crack continents in half. The animals were just as bad. Giant predators that hunted in packs. poisonous creatures that killed with a single bite, diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Even the plants were dangerous, with thorns and toxins and seeds that could choke out all other life. Most species would have died on such a world. The few survivors would have hidden underground or found some safe corner to cower in. But humans did something different. They learned to fight back. They made tools to hunt the predators. They built shelters to survive the storms. They created weapons to defend themselves from everything that wanted to kill them. Most importantly, they learned to work together against threats that no individual could face alone. Other species developed technology to make life easier and more comfortable. Humans developed technology to help them survive and kill their enemies more efficiently. Admiral called Lieutenant from the weapons station. The fleet reports all systems ready. Nuclear warheads are armed and targeted. Kinetic kill vehicles are loaded. Point defense systems are active. Nodded, what about the Marines? All assault battalions are suited up and ready for boarding operations, ma'am. They're eager to see what these bioships look like from the inside. That was another thing that made humans different. Every other species in the galaxy fought their space battles at long range with energy weapons. If boarding was necessary, they sent in robots or automated systems. The idea of living beings fighting inside spacecraft was considered barbaric. But humans had always understood that sometimes you had to get close to your enemy. Sometimes you had to look them in the eye when you killed them. Earth had taught them that lesson over and over again. The communication system chimed and saw that she had a priority message from Earth Command. General Harrison's weathered face appeared on the screen. "Sarah," he said without formal greeting, "I've been reading the intelligence reports on this swarm. Nasty business. Their bioships adapt to energy weapons by changing their cellular structure. Heat gets dispersed. Electromagnetic radiation gets absorbed or reflected. Very clever evolution." "Yes, sir," replied. "They've been able to counter every weapon the galactic fleets have used against them." Harrison grinned, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Good thing we didn't evolve on a garden world like the rest of them. Kinetic energy doesn't adapt, Sarah. A chunk of metal moving at high speed will punch through anything, no matter how it's designed." "That's what I'm counting on, sir." "Remember your training," Harrison said. "The galactic races fight wars like they're playing a game. Elegant moves, sophisticated tactics, minimal casualties. They don't understand what real war looks like. This swarm has been fighting children. Now they're about to meet adults." The transmission ended, turned back to her officers. They were all veterans of conflicts across human space. They had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile alien species. They knew what it meant to face an enemy that wanted to completely destroy you. "All ships," announced over the fleet communication system, "prepare for combat deployment. Remember, the enemy adapts to energy weapons. That means our missiles and kinetic rounds will be completely new to them. They won't know how to defend against good old-fashioned explosives and metal projectiles." She paused and looked around the bridge. Every face showed the same expression of grim determination. These people understood what they were facing. An enemy that had consumed entire worlds and defeated every force sent against it. "The swarm thinks it knows how galactic warfare works," continued. "They're about to learn that humans fight differently. We don't probe and test and gradually escalate. When we identify a threat, we hit it with everything we have until it stops moving. That's how you survive on a death world. That's how we'll save the galaxy." The fleet continued its journey through hyperspace. In a few hours, they would drop back into normal space and face an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before, but was confident. The swarm had adapted to fight civilized species with civilized weapons. They had never faced who learned to fight by surviving on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. The Indomitable shuddered slightly as it adjusted course. They were almost there. The Terra fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system with the sudden violence of ripping fabric. 200 human ships appeared in perfect formation, their hulls dark against the star field. Admiral immediately understood why the galactic forces had been so terrified. The fourth planet was dying. Massive bioships, each the size of a small moon, hung in orbit around the world like bloated parasites. Organic tendrils hundreds of kilometers long reached down from the ships to the planet's surface, stripping away continents piece by piece. Where once there had been blue oceans and green forests, now there was only bare rock and glowing streams of molten metal being sucked up into the alien vessels. "My God," whispered Commander Martinez, staring at the tactical display. "How many of them are there?" "Sensors count 47 large bioships and over 300 smaller vessels," reported Lieutenant from the sensor station. "They're consuming approximately 10,000 tons of planetary material per minute." Felt a cold anger growing in her chest. These creatures were not just conquering worlds, they were eating them. Every living thing on that planet was dead or being digested in the belly of those organic monsters. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Fleet. They're positioned 30 million kilometers out from the planet." The screen showed Chancellor's worried face. Behind her could see the bridge of an advanced alien warship, all smooth curves and glowing displays. "Admiral said, 'We are pleased you arrived safely. However, I must warn you that direct engagement with the swarm is extremely dangerous. Our standard protocol involves careful probing attacks to test their defenses, followed by a graduated response based on their adaptation patterns." Stared at the alien leader. "Graduated response? Chancellor, those things are eating an entire planet. How many more worlds are you willing to lose while we run tests?" Looked uncomfortable. "We must be cautious. The bioships learn from every attack. If we reveal our full capabilities too quickly, they will adapt and become even stronger." "Then it's a good thing they don't know our capabilities," replied. She turned to her weapons officer. "Lieutenant, all ships are to target the largest bio-vessels. Full missile barrage, nuclear warheads armed. I want those planet killers dead in the first volley." The galactic observers watched in horror as the human fleet suddenly came alive with activity. Launch tubes opened along the sides of every ship, revealing rows of missiles like the teeth of some metal predator. "Admiral," called urgently, "you cannot launch a full assault without proper reconnaissance. The swarm will adapt to your weapons immediately." "Let them try," said grimly. "All ships fire." The space around the human fleet lit up as thousands of missiles launched simultaneously. They were not the elegant energy torpedoes favored by galactic navies. These were crude metal cylinders filled with high explosives and nuclear warheads, accelerating on chemical rockets toward their targets. Commander Al, watching from his scout ship, transmitted his observations to the Galactic Fleet Command. "The humans have launched approximately 4,000 kinetic projectiles at the bioships. This appears to be a primitive saturation attack. The swarm's adaptive defenses should counter them easily." But as the missiles reached their targets, something unexpected happened. The bioships, evolved to absorb and disperse energy attacks, had no defense against raw kinetic force. The first warhead struck the largest bio-vessel and detonated in a brilliant flash of nuclear fire. The organic hull, designed to adapt to laser hits by changing its cellular structure, simply vaporized. A massive hole appeared in the side of the bioship, exposing twisted organic corridors to hard vacuum. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as more missiles found their mark. Within minutes, the bioship was dead, its massive corpse drifting away from the planet in pieces. "Impossible," whispered Commander Al. "The adaptive armor should have evolved to counter the attacks." Admiral's voice came over the communication channel, calm and professional. "Kinetic energy doesn't adapt, Commander. A nuclear explosion releases the same amount of energy whether it's the first time or the 100th time you see it. The surviving bioships reacted quickly, releasing clouds of smaller organisms that swarmed toward the human fleet like angry insects. Each fighter-sized creature was a living weapon, capable of adapting its attack methods based on the defenses it encountered. The galactic observers expected to see the humans overwhelmed. The biofighters had destroyed dozens of advanced alien squadrons through their ability to evolve new attack patterns during combat. Instead, they watched in amazement as the human ships activated their point defense systems. Unlike the precise laser grids used by galactic fleets, human ships carried hundreds of small cannons that fired explosive shells into space around each vessel. The biofighters flew into a wall of exploding metal. Proximity-fused rounds detonated when they detected nearby movement, filling space with deadly fragments. The organic attackers, expecting to face energy beams they could adapt to, found themselves being torn apart by simple shrapnel. Launch fighters ordered. Human fighter squadrons launched from their carriers, sleek metal craft that looked primitive compared to the elegant alien designs. But as they engaged the bioswarm, their true nature became apparent. Each human fighter carried missiles instead of energy weapons. They did not need to penetrate the adaptive bioarmor of their targets. The missiles simply flew close enough to detonate, destroying enemy craft through shockwave and explosion rather than precise energy application. Commander Al watched in fascination and growing respect as human tactics proved devastatingly effective. "Their entire military doctrine is based on overkill," he reported. "They do not try to find elegant solutions. They simply apply more force than their enemies can possibly withstand." The battle raged for hours. The swarm tried every adaptation they had developed over centuries of conquest. Their bioships grew thicker armor, deployed energy-absorbing fields, even attempted to camouflage themselves against the star field. None of it worked against enemies who fought with nuclear weapons and high explosives. The human fleet methodically destroyed one bioship after another, their kinetic weapons punching through every defense the swarm could evolve. By the end of the day, 32 of the massive biovessels were dead, drifting in orbit around the ravaged planet. The remaining swarm units began to withdraw, retreating deeper into the system where larger concentrations of their forces waited. Admiral studied the tactical reports with satisfaction. The first engagement had gone exactly as planned. The swarm's primary advantage, their ability to adapt to energy weapons, was useless against human military technology. "Admiral," called Lieutenant, "the Galactic Fleet is requesting permission to approach. Chancellor wants to congratulate you on the victory." Nodded, but her expression remained serious. "Tell the Chancellor that this was just a scouting engagement. The real swarm fleet is still out there, deeper in the system, and they'll be ready for us next time." She turned back to the tactical display, studying the sensor readings from the inner system. Hundreds more bioships waited there, including massive vessels that dwarfed even the planet killers they had just destroyed. The swarm was about to learn what happened when a species evolved on a world where everything tried to kill them. But first, they would test human defenses in ways that no civilized enemy ever had. The real battle was just beginning. 3 days later, the main fleet emerged from the inner system like a nightmare-given form. Bioships the size of asteroids moved in perfect coordination, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. At their center was something that made even Admiral pause in shock. The primary hiveship stretched across 50 kilometers of space, a living moon covered in writhing tendrils and weapon ports that breathed like gills. Intelligence reports had mentioned it, but seeing it in person was different. This creature had consumed entire star systems and grown fat on the remains of civilizations. "Sensors are picking up massive energy readings from the hiveship," reported Lieutenant, her voice tight with nervousness. "It's generating some kind of bioelectric field that's interfering with our targeting systems." Admiral studied the tactical display as the swarm fleet approached. Nearly 500 bioships of various sizes, all moving with the coordination of a single organism. The galactic fleets had never faced numbers like this and survived. "Admiral," called Commander Martinez from communications, "the galactic fleet is requesting our withdrawal to a safer distance. Chancellor says the main hive ship has never been successfully engaged." "Tell the Chancellor that's because nobody has tried hard enough," replied. She opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, prepare for close engagement. Target the enemy reproduction vessels first." Commander Al's shocked voice came over the communication channel. "Admiral, those are non-combatant vessels. They are only growing new bioforms, not participating in battle. Galactic law prohibits targeting non-military ships." His reply was cold and practical. "Commander, this is not a police action. This is war for the survival of every living thing in this galaxy. Those reproduction ships are growing new combat forms. We kill the factories first, then deal with what's already been built." The battle began with another missile barrage, but this time the swarm was ready. The bioships had grown new defensive organs during their retreat, organic structures that fired clouds of defensive spores into space. Many human missiles were destroyed or knocked off course by the living defensive fire. But humans had learned to fight on a world where the environment itself was an enemy. They knew that battles rarely went according to plan, and they had prepared for adaptation. "Switch to kinetic kill vehicles," ordered. "All ships prepare for ramming speed." The galactic observers watched in disbelief as the human fleet accelerated directly toward the swarm line. Instead of staying at long range where civilized battles were fought, the humans were deliberately closing to point-blank range. "They're going to get themselves killed," whispered Commander Al. The bioships responded by launching boarding organisms, living creatures designed to attach to enemy vessels and eat through their hulls. Against galactic ships with their thin hulls and energy shields, such attacks were devastating. Against human warships built to survive the worst conditions imaginable, they were merely an annoyance. The boarding organisms struck human hulls and began their work, using organic acids and mechanical cutting organs to breach the armor. But human ships were built with redundant systems and compartmentalized designs. Even massive hull breaches did not disable them. More importantly, something happened that the swarm had never encountered before. As the bioforms cut their way into human ships, armed humans were waiting for them. Sergeant Maria Santos led her Marine squad through the corridors of the HCDF cruiser Vengeful, following the sounds of combat deeper in the ship. The boarding organisms had breached the outer hull and were spreading through the vessel like an infection. "Contact front," called Corporal Johnson from point position. "3 bioforms in the main corridor." Santos saw them, creatures like giant insects with razor-sharp claws and acid-dripping mandibles. They moved with the fluid grace of perfect predators, adapted for fighting in the sterile environments of galactic ships. They had never fought Marines. The first bioform leaped toward Johnson with deadly speed. Instead of backing away or trying to establish a defensive position, Johnson charged forward, firing his assault rifle at point-blank range. The explosive rounds designed for close combat tore through organic armor that had been adapted to resist energy weapons. The second creature tried to flank around the Marines, using tactics that had worked against other species. Santos anticipated the move and triggered a fragmentation grenade that filled the corridor with deadly metal fragments. The bioform died before it could adapt to the new threat. The third organism attempted to retreat and call for reinforcements. It never got the chance. Human Marines had learned to hunt in packs during their species' early evolution. They moved together, covered each other's positions, and never gave their prey a chance to escape. Similar battles were taking place throughout the human fleet. The swarm had expected to find the same sterile defensive positions used by other species. Instead, they encountered something no galactic race had ever developed: soldiers trained specifically for close-quarters combat in hostile environments. The bioforms tried to adapt, growing new defensive structures and attack methods. But adaptation took time, and humans did not give them that luxury. They moved through their own ships like persistent hunters, tracking down every invader with methodical efficiency. "Admiral," reported Major Harrison from the Marine Command Center, "all boarding organisms have been eliminated. Casualties are minimal." The bioforms seemed unprepared for direct physical combat. Nodded grimly. Of course they were unprepared. Every other species in the galaxy fought their wars at a distance, using technology to avoid personal violence. Only humans had learned that sometimes you had to get close to your enemy and kill them with your own hands. The space battle continued around them. Human ships pushed through the swarm defensive line, their kinetic weapons punching holes in bioships faster than they could adapt. But the real target was still ahead: the massive reproduction vessels that were growing new combat forms even as the battle raged. "All ships concentrate fire on the breeding ships," ordered. "I want those facilities destroyed before they can spawn more defenders." The galactic observers watched in shocked silence as human weapons tore into vessels they had never dared to target. The reproduction ships, never designed for combat, died quickly under concentrated fire. Each destroyed vessel meant thousands of potential bioforms would never be born. Commander Al finally understood what he was witnessing. "They fight like the apex predator of their planet," he whispered to his crew. "No mercy, no hesitation, complete destruction of threats." The swarm began to fall back toward their hive ship, but was not finished. As the biofleet retreated, human vessels pursued them, firing continuously. Where galactic fleets would have accepted a partial victory and regrouped, the humans pressed their attack without pause. "Admiral," called Lieutenant, "the enemy is attempting to regroup around the hive ship. Their defensive pattern suggests they're preparing for a final stand." Studied the tactical display. The hive ship was huge and heavily defended, protected by the remaining bio-vessels of the swarm. It would be a difficult target for any conventional attack. Fortunately, humans had never been conventional. "Prepare the fleet for concentrated assault," she ordered. "All ships form Assault Formation Alpha. We're going straight through their defenses." "Ma'am," Commander Martinez said carefully, "that's essentially a frontal attack on their strongest position. Galactic tactical doctrine strongly advises against such actions." Admiral smiled, and it was the expression of a predator that had cornered its prey. "Commander, galactic tactical doctrine is why the swarm has never been defeated. We're not here to follow galactic rules. We're here to win." The human fleet began to form up for the final assault. In a few hours, they would either destroy the largest bioorganism in known space or die trying. Either way, the galaxy would learn what it meant to fight like a. The final assault on the hive ship began at dawn, ship time. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as her fleet formed into a spearhead formation that no galactic commander would have attempted. 200 human vessels arranged themselves into a single massive arrow pointing directly at the heart of the swarm. The hive ship hung in space before them like a cancerous growth, 50 kilometers of poolsing organic tissue surrounded by the remaining biofleet. Defensive organisms the size of battleships crawled across its surface, while weapon ports that looked like giant mouths opened and closed in anticipation. "All galactic forces are maintaining safe distance," reported Commander Martinez. "Chancellor is requesting that we reconsider this direct approach." Ignored the alien transmission and focused on her own fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral. The enemy hive ship is the brain of this entire swarm. Kill it, and every bioform in this system becomes just another dumb animal. Our mission is simple: punch through their defenses and put a nuclear warhead in that thing's brain. She paused and looked around the bridge at her officers. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before in galactic history: a direct assault on the primary command organism of the swarm. "Remember," she continued, "we are not here to fight fair. We are here to win. Every ship fires everything they have at the exact same point in their defensive perimeter. We break their line through concentrated force, not clever tactics." The human fleet began its approach. Unlike the elegant maneuvers favored by galactic navies, this was a straight-line attack with all guns blazing. Thousands of missiles and kinetic rounds poured toward the bioships defending the hive ship. The swarm responded with everything they had learned from previous encounters. Bioships fired clouds of defensive spores, released swarms of interceptor organisms, and even attempted to form energy shields using their own electrical fields. None of it was enough. The humans had learned warfare on a planet where overwhelming force was the only reliable survival strategy. They did not probe for weaknesses or attempt sophisticated flanking maneuvers. They simply applied more destructive power than their enemies could possibly withstand. The defensive line began to crack under the concentrated assault. Bioships that had survived millions of years of evolution died in minutes under the focused fire of human weapons. The elegant defensive formations that had protected the hive ship for centuries collapsed into chaos. "Break through," called Lieutenant. "The outer defensive perimeter is collapsing. We have a clear path to the hive ship." But as the human fleet pushed through the broken defenses, the hive ship itself began to respond. The massive organism had been growing and adapting for longer than human civilization had existed. It was not going to die easily. Weapon ports across the creature's surface opened like flowers, revealing biocannons that fired streams of living plasma. The organic weapons had adapted specifically to counter the energy shields and hull designs of galactic ships. They had no idea how to fight vessels built like flying fortresses. The plasma stream struck human hulls and simply splashed off the thick armor plating. Where they should have punched through shields and into vital systems, they found meters of hardened steel designed to withstand anything the universe could throw at them. "All ships concentrate fire on the primary neural cluster," ordered. "Sensors show a concentration of nervous tissue near the center of the organism. That's our target." The human fleet pushed deeper into the hive ship's defenses. Bioforms swarmed around them like antibodies attacking an infection, but human point defense systems turned space around each ship into a killing field of exploding metal. As they approached the neural cluster, the hive ship attempted its final defense. Massive tendrils erupted from its surface, trying to grab and crush the attacking vessels. The organic limbs were designed to break ships apart through crushing force and acid secretions. They had never tried to crush something built by. The tendrils wrapped around the assault cruiser Retribution and began to squeeze. Instead of breaking apart like galactic ships would have, the human vessel simply continued firing its weapons while trapped in the creature's grip. The hull groaned under the pressure but held firm. "This is Captain Torres of the Retribution," came a calm voice over the communication channel. "We are caught but functional. Recommend you continue the assault while we keep this thing distracted." Watched in admiration as the trapped ship fired its remaining missiles directly into the tendril holding it. The explosions severed the organic limb, freeing the vessel and leaving the hive ship wounded and bleeding strange fluids into space. The final approach to the neural cluster was a nightmare of defensive fire and organic weapons. But humans had learned to fight in conditions that would have driven other species insane with terror. They pushed forward through walls of living plasma and swarms of bioforms, losing ships but never losing momentum. Admiral called Major Harrison from the Marine Command Center. We're close enough for boarding operations. Request permission to take a team inside the hive ship. Stared at him. Major, that thing is 50 kilometers of hostile alien tissue. You could get lost in there and never find your way out. Harrison grinned. Ma'am, my great-grandfather hunted deer in forests where everything wanted to kill him. This is just a bigger forest. The boarding operation was the culmination of everything that made humans different from other species. While galactic races sent robots or automated systems to explore hostile environments, humans sent their own people. And those people were trained to fight and survive in conditions that would kill anything else. Major Harrison led his team through organic corridors that pulsed like arteries, fighting off immune system responses that tried to digest them alive. They navigated by following nervous tissue toward the central brain, using tactics developed for urban warfare on there. Behind them, the human fleet continued its assault on the neural cluster from outside. Nuclear weapons detonated against organic armor that had never evolved to resist such primitive but devastating attacks. Finally, after hours of fighting through the living maze of the hive ship, Harrison's team reached their target. The central brain of the swarm spread before them like a cavern made of nervous tissue, electrical impulses flickering through it like lightning. Charges set, Harrison reported over his communication system. Everyone get clear. The nuclear explosion that followed could be seen from orbit. The hive ship convulsed as its central nervous system was destroyed, sending death screams across every bioform in the system. Admiral watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the massive creature died. All across the battlefield, swarm bioships suddenly became still and lifeless, drifting without purpose or coordination. That's it, she announced to her fleet. The swarm is finished. Begin cleanup operations. In the aftermath, as human ships destroyed the remaining bioforms and rescued survivors from damaged vessels, Chancellor finally approached in her diplomatic ship. Admiral, she said when they were face to face, I must ask you something. Your tactics, your weapons, your entire approach to warfare. It is unlike anything we have ever seen. Why do humans fight so differently from the rest of us? Thought for a moment before answering. Chancellor, your species evolved on worlds where cooperation and intelligence were rewarded. You developed civilization because working together made life easier and more comfortable. She gestured toward the wreckage of the hive ship drifting in space around them. We evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill us. Predators, weather, disease, even the plants and water were trying to end us. We developed civilization because we were too dangerous to fight each other anymore. We learned that overwhelming force applied quickly was the only reliable way to eliminate threats. Looked troubled, but that means you are saying that humans are naturally violent and destructive. No, replied quietly. We are saying that we learned to be very good at violence when it was necessary for survival. The galaxy is lucky that we prefer making allies to making widows. She paused and looked at the alien leader seriously. The swarm was a dangerous species approaching your core worlds. You called us for help and we answered. But Chancellor, I want you to understand something important. His expression was calm, but her words carried the weight of truth. The most dangerous species in this galaxy is not some external threat approaching from the outer rim. It has been here all along, living on a small blue planet in the Sol system. We have been your neighbors for generations, and you never realized what we really were. The communication channel fell silent as the implications sank in. The galactic powers had spent centuries worrying about external threats, never realizing that the species they considered primitive and backward had the most effective military force in known space. However, continued with a slight smile, we chose to be your allies instead of your conquerors. Remember that the next time someone suggests that humans are just barbaric. As the human fleet began its journey home, leaving behind the wreckage of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. One thing was clear to every observer. The galaxy had just learned why humans were called. And perhaps more importantly, they had learned to be very grateful that Earth had chosen to join the galactic community instead of conquering it. In the depths of space, the bioships of the swarm drifted silent and dead, destroyed by the descendants of persistence hunters who had learned to survive on the most dangerous world in the galaxy. The dangerous species had indeed been approaching, but it had not been the swarm.